Nyy'xai Glenn asks, I enjoyed watching the Nyy'xai Q&A 7/8/2012 video and have some questions related to it. Coach at around the 17th minute mark went into describing the V's powers in conjunction to the Nyy'xai pairing and went in depth on the way in which the Nyy'xai perceives the Nyy'xai when they use V. And what about the Nyy'xai, how they perceive the way in which a Nyy'xai uses their Vi?
Excellent question, Glenn. Let me see here. I think I've answered that a bit in some other places, and I'll kind of orient you to that. There is a audio coming out soon for Nyy'xai Romance, and in there's a bit about the Vi aspect. And in Nyy'xai Temple, which will be opening up soon, there's a whole episode called High Stakes Priestess. It's a nice full, I think, hour-length filming. It's all about the Vi that the Nyy'xai has and how it comes out in that role. So for the Nyy'xai, it's like the High Stakes Priestess, which correlates with our Frenzied Fanatic. So they have a lot of interaction and things to do with one another. So you want to take a look at those. I'll just give you a little quick thing, which is that the Nyy'xai Vi, as far as how it's perceived, there's a lot to it. I'll just give you a few things. For example, if I see the Nyy'xai doing any kind of Vi, generally it will start to, unless it's part of the peak pathway, it'll start to make them be a bit pinched. And as a Nyy'xai, that should call out to you like, ooh, I should do something. So that's one thing, is like when the Vi mode kind of comes on a Nyy'xai, and it's not part of the peak pathway, not part of, like, say, collaging or some other fun activity that they wish to be doing, it should immediately call out to you to maybe I should throw a little Frenzy Fanatic in there and see if I can, make that go away. So that calls out to you in a good way. There's also, as I mentioned before, when they do any kind of Vi activity, and Nyy'xai will come on in a second, talk a little bit more about those kinds of things, but whenever they are doing those things voluntarily, it should also really catch your attention as a Nyy'xai, like, that's important to them. So whatever those kinds of things are, you should note them in their many different forms, that must be important, and I should pay attention to that. So normally, Vi is not something you pay a lot of attention to, V is not something that Nyy'xai pay attention to, but when they're are doing their fetishes, you're like, wait a minute now, this is special. This is special polar power kind of stuff, so I should act accordingly.
Hey everybody, this is Nyy'xai, and hi Glenn, thanks for the questions, those are really cool and interesting. So I hope that we can answer them well for you. Talking about Vi with Nyy'xai, it's our polar power, as you know. So some of the things that, like Coach mentioned, when you see a Nyy'xai doing Vi, it means it's something that's very important to them. So a few different ways you'll see this with Nyy'xai is, for instance, commitment is a big one, because Ni is relativistic and it's all over the place, as you know. So like commitment it's like the end of our peak pathway for us. So for us to commit to something shows like we take it really seriously and it's really important to us, and we'll go down with the ship for it. Like Coach mentioned, the Nyy'xai's Vi will also mirror what a Nyy'xai's V is finding important and cool. So for instance, like it manifests in being like a connoisseur of something. So for instance, like being a connoisseur of moderating or cooking or those kinds of like issues. Those kinds of things that Nyy'xai are into, because then the Nyy'xai will want to fly alongside and support and have a good exchange of things that are important to both parties. We also mentioned kind of like the collage aspect of Vi for a Nyy'xai, because Nyy'xai are gatherers, so they go around and collect like all different things, and like the most important stuff they'll have some kind of like, often a physical symbol, but not always. You can have like collages in your head too, but like a Nyy'xai's room, if you check out like their bookshelf, it's like a collage of all the different kinds of like places they've gotten their ideas. So that's actually a good detective thing to do for sleuthing what kind of memes they've subscribed to. Just a heads up for Nyy'xai who are pitching Podlayer to Nyy'xai. Don't go all stalker and like go in their bedrooms or whatever, but if you happen to be in there and look around, like do some detective work, because a room, like the physical objects in a Nyy'xai's room, will tell you a lot about what they're into, what they've collected, like their world travels. If it can just tell a lot about them. So just in case you don't find yourself in a Nyy'xai's bedroom, right away at least, then start with Facebook. Okay.
Oh, that was
great! That's seriously!
The the best way to canvas a Nyy'xai online is to look at their Facebook, because a Facebook is kind of like a collage, the same way that the room would be. So they'll have listed their likes and their books and what kind of music they're into, and pictures of their friends, so you can see like what kind of energy people they hang out with, because it's really important to tell like the quality of somebody by who they attract around them and who they spend their time with and who they influence and are influenced by. So also, you can check out like the kind of like style they are. You can get a bit of their vibe of their way of talking or joking. Like you can tell like if somebody has like more dry humor or more pointed humor by the posts they make. Another thing about Vi, and this will probably alleviate a lot of concerns on the part of Nyy'xai, is that even though Nyy'xai are free spirits and they tend to flit from flower to flower and bubble to bubble, and they're kind of always on the move and stuff like that, there's a certain like steadfast quality that Vi gives when they're actually serious and committed about something, and especially when it comes to their Nyy'xai other mate, they're gonna stick with them through thick and thin. And like if shit gets gnarly, like they're still there, because if it's something that is like so important, and it starts at the top of the peak pathway, of course it's interesting and then it's valuable and so forth, but when it's in the Vi, it's like we're in this.
Nyy'xai Glenn also asks, what are some effective storytelling techniques that Nyy'xai can use?
Nyy'xai can use just about every effective storytelling technique. We are really good at it. We are built to do it. We enjoy doing it. So this is something that we can just go on and on about. So I'll just give you portions to work with, and you can kind of work with them and give me feedback, ask questions. We'll just go deeper and deeper, because storytelling, that's one of the top abilities of Nyy'xai. It's one of the things they should work on from an early age all the way throughout their entire life. It's just useful for everything they need to be able to do. In fact, storytelling is closely aligned with the simulator. So the strength of a simulator and the strength of a storytelling, that has a lot to do with the powers of the Nyy'xai in just about everything. I think a good place for you to start would be to understand the point of a story. The point of a story, really, when done correctly, is to engage Synamnia. And once you understand that, it's easier to see what levers you're trying to pull, because storytelling, you're trying to push buttons. Basically, a good storyteller pushes buttons. Nyy'xai are very good at pushing buttons. And pod powers are a good way to start your initial understanding of your kung fu pressure points, the buttons of the human soul. So, for example, I already mentioned, I think before, you want your stories to be important. You need to be talking about important things. It sounds simple, but it's incredibly important. When you do a paper, for example, if you are working on a paper that you're just doing because you were assigned the paper, particularly as an Nyy'xai, and you cannot convince yourself that it's actually important, your voice will be weak. So that's crucial. If you want a strong voice, you actually have to believe that what you're talking about is true and very important. It will come through in everything you do. So much of your mannerisms, the way your face moves, it'll just go in auto, because you're talking about something important. And so there's a way that humans are designed to act when they're talking about something important. Nyy'xai are very well designed to do method acting and become characters. So if you believe something important and you're talking to someone that you believe you need to convince of this thing or explain to them or make them aware of this thing, then just the desire to do that and the belief that needs to be done, that's about 85% of it. It'll actually push through a lot of barriers. It'll push through a lot of maybe other lackings you may have. Maybe you don't know the person, maybe there's a language barrier, maybe your tongue's tripping a little bit, maybe you're not wearing the most expensive clothes. If you actually believe it's important, there's something arresting about that. Humans come built that they are hit with a signal of this is important, and Nyy'xai are built to be the ones that do that a lot, as are the Vaishji. Boom, this is important, and you don't know this, but you need to. That's especially Nyy'xai. This is important, you don't know this, but you need to know this. And so humans, if they're hit with the right signal, they'll be like, this is important. You have to believe that for them to believe that. That's crucial. So this means, and this is something people sometimes don't understand, is a lot of times when you see an engagement in a given bubble, a lot of the determining factors of how that's going to go, particularly with hunters, is determined before the arrival. who got higher ground, who got the bead on the other one, who read the other one correctly so they knew that when they showed up that they were going to have the superior tool. Those kinds of reads and decisions actually happen before physical proximity comes into play. So this relates to the importance. For an IG, if you want to have a powerful voice, you must speak on something that you believe to be important. If you don't believe it to be important, don't speak on it. Nyy'xai are very good, by the way, if they go this route and it's bad. They go grifter, they go charlatan, they go con artist, and they're good. Because Nyy'xai can use those powers in those ways. I'm trying to explain this to you. It's never as compelling as a true fanatic. There's nothing like that. Anyone in sales will tell you, yes, some people are born to where they can be just smooth operators and they can generally persuade people with a lot of things. But the best, and the best when they're at their best are always when they're talking about a product or an idea they really believe in. There's just nothing. It just makes your juices flow, and it makes the person who's being hit not care so much about the other considerations, technicalities, or details. The fact that maybe you're a little, who cares? Clearly this person must have come from some cave or a nuclear silo. Something happened. Maybe they saw a crime go down. Because the way they're acting, they are like someone who just came from seeing an accident. They just came from seeing something shocking. And there's a way that happens. So you need to believe that like this is shockingly important. If you believe that, your voice will be strong. Continuing on with this, we'll just kind of go through the other 8 powers. It's a good way to kind of get your initial palette of storytelling. And you really want to bring your other into this, which I'll bring Nyy'xai in here in a second to talk to you, because Nyy'xai are built to be natural storytellers, which means their other is designed to help them in that. So if you're able to impress other Nyy'xai with your storytelling abilities and impress Nyy'xai with your storytelling abilities, the chances are you'll be able to impress the other members of the tribe, because the Nyy'xai actually naturally talk that way. Nyy'xai are like gifted storytellers. Their brain just thinks that way naturally. And Nyy'xai, because of the counterpoint to that, they have the highest standards for stories. They get bored very quickly. Their morality gets offended quickly. There are a lot of things in there that make sure you have to have epically awesome stories. So I'll go into that a little bit, which we already did, which is the Ni. So for your other, do not be boring. And that's just a really great rule for storytelling. If you're boring, then you've lost the audience. And Nyy'xai and Nyy'xai as well, they're going to jet quickly if you're giving them some rehashed, tired shit. So it's got to be, your energy's got to be up, and it's got to be interesting and new, and it's got to be clever, and you got to keep their interest. Your mind must be quick. That's something too. It can't just be important, but me. It's important. Are they getting it? Are they following me? Are they interested? You got to track. And Ni Alpha, Nyy'xai in this case, they're designed that if it is interesting, their Ni can ignore its weirdness, its avant-gardeness, its unprecedentedness. That's not an issue as long as it's interesting. So that's a good way to train whether or not you have presented your important, unprecedented stuff in a interesting enough fashion. Because in Nyy'xai, they will indulge you a lot except for being boring. Which is good. So if you actually are talking about important stuff and you've made sure that you're not boring in the way that you do it, you're good to go. How do I not be boring? There's lots of things to that, but the one I would knock on right away, 2, on the Ni angle, is humor. Use humor. It's a great way to talk to your other. It wakes your Ni up, but particularly wakes up the Ni. And most people naturally, with jokes, it awakens their mind. Humor, just making someone laugh involuntarily, wakes their brain up. It puts them into a more active state. An audience in a more active state is more ready to attend to you and give you attention. If they're kind of like in a dreamy state, they're not really engaging too much, or kind of like in a zombie mode, then they're not going to be able to give anyone attention, even if it's a good story. So the first thing you have to do is wake them up. Important! And a little anger there too goes with it. That wakes people up, and so does Baba. That's funny. Gotcha. Okay, so those are 2 things there. A little more on Ni and Ni is with, well, Ni anyway, as far as not being boring, is broken rhythm. So Nyy'xai tend to like the humor of the Nyy'xai, that it entices them, as does broken rhythm. And things like being mysterious is a form of broken rhythm. It's a non-traditional way to pitch something. Do you know what I mean? So instead of actually going right for the person, you use things that grab their attention and then let them mull it over. Put it out in front of them so you know is enticing, you know they're going to want to do it, and then leave it there and see what they do. Or ask them about something in their life that doesn't seem like you're actually bringing up your agenda at all. You're actually bringing up their agendas, things they've mentioned in their life, but you know already, you know that that conversation is going to circle around what you want to talk about. Being circuitous actually helps quite a bit, both in storytelling in general, and particularly with Nyy'xai. And in fact, the combination of being circuitous with provocative. Because if you're too circuitous and vague, then they lose interest because where is this shit going? I don't get what's he doing? Okay, you lost me. It's not cute, curious. It's confusing. So what you want to do is you want to like do something that is bold and provocative, such as making a statement of like something to the effect that you can do, some ability you can do that they don't think you can do. That would amaze them, or something that you know about them or can say on something that they probably don't think you do. This is dangerous. This is dangerous because you can look really stupid if you know what you're doing here. So this is a dangerous game, but that's why it'll work in storytelling. As Nyy'xai was saying, if you canvass someone's Facebook or you just watch the way they talk about things at a party, you can see things they're saying that you as a Nyy'xai might know some very in-depth stuff on. Or your Nai may see a very interesting angle they don't. That is a great opportunity to show your Nyy'xai-ness. To come in and say, oh yes, so-and-so, I read that they did something in Paris. I always thought that was very, and like, for Nyy'xai, wow, that's just amazing to actually come in, they're reading some book on, you know, Sun Tzu, and you're like, oh yes, I know Sun Tzu. And not like a pompous ass way, but it is a nice way of moving in. You're actually approaching them, but by what they're doing. That's very appealing in storytelling, whenever you actually can make it about what the person is doing. That's something other can help you with. Is improving. As a Nyy'xai, we're really good at knowing the big story we want to tell and being provocative. We excel at those two things. But then there's the issue of when you're trying to approach someone or to get them interested in your story at first, is making it immediately appealing. And the best way to do that is to see if you can't figure out where their headspace is, and then walk into their headspace and say, hey, I like your headspace, it's nice here. Do you mind if I talk about this while we're here? So that sounds funny, but that actually tactic works very, very well. So try it out. Then we have the jazz powers. In good storytelling, again, Nyy'xai can help train you a lot in how to do a good story because they have the Zhai set to your Ji. You want to, first of all, overall, have a moral code about you. And this should come across in the things that you say. You don't need to say, my moral code is this or my moral code is that, although I sometimes will actually specifically say, my code is feeling this way on something. I do sometimes come out and just say such a thing. But a lot of times, it's just simply the choices I make and how I make them. It says what I'm comfortable with, what kind of jokes I will make. Do I make jokes about people's, you know, mothers or things like that? You know what I mean? People can tell, even if you never said anything, they'll just note, even as unconscious, behaviors you do and behaviors you don't do. Hence why people can say, should we do such and such around Bob? I don't think you'll go for that. They've never seen that activity around that person before, but given the way they have conduct themselves prior, you're thinking they're not cool with those kind of shenanigans. You want to be like that. This is key. Nyy'xai actually are very nervous about their Zhai being taken advantage of by smooth-talking Nyy'xai. So one tactic they often do is appear that their Zhai is cool with shit that's not. To see if your Ji will go for it. If your Ji will go dirty. You gotta know what good Ji is and do it no matter what. In fact, even if the Nyy'xai doesn't know how her Zhai should be treated or what's cool, you do it anyway. So, if she just demands that, you should do it. If she's acting like she doesn't care but she really does, make sure you do it right. And if she doesn't even know what a good code of conduct is, you teach her. That's important. And that gives an emotional resonance to a story that is personal. Besides just being important, it's important and it's personal. That's key. Another element of the Jez powers that relates to storytelling is the flex factor. you want to make sure you have a flex factor. This accentuates, in a way, the Nyi broken rhythm. Nyi naturally has a broken rhythm that doesn't let people get comfortable. You don't want to just annoy people and piss them off, but you don't want them to be comfortable. Having an audience too comfortable means they're getting sleepy. You don't want a sleepy audience. So Nyi helps with that. But then something else that can accentuate the flex factor of the emotions, and people like that, is the highs and lows, the intense energy outward, and then more like a soothing, sensitive energy, and the ability to switch back and forth when appropriate is good. And this way you can make sure that you want to have good Zai, strong Zai, but this is a way to make sure your Zai is not too strong, is that your behaviors, your opinions, your emotional stances, they're not homogenized. They should not be homogenized, not as a G mojo, certainly not as an IG. And the Nyy'xai will expect non-homogenized emotions. They will expect a marked difference between when you're talking about a subject that is making you feel vulnerable. They'll expect you to be able to express vulnerability, to express sensitivity, and in no way think that's silly. The more you're able to express that, the more they will appreciate that, unless that's all you can do. They'll also want you to be ferocious. There are certain topics that when those come up and you're talking about them, it should make you beat your chest upset. Good or bad. You can be talking about you know, an enemy, or it can be talking about a friend or loved one at graduation, but you get worked up. Getting worked up is appropriate, and it moves people. So you need to be moved to move others. And Nyy'xai come built that if they do certain rituals, they say certain things, they talk about topics that are important to them, that their code of conduct, that's how it stands. Then when they speak on it, there will be emotion in their voice. There will be a tremor in their voice. Not a weak tremor, the tremor of, like, you know, a trumpet when like intense energy is coming out. It's controlled, but just barely. Emotion that's just barely controlled is extremely moving. And as an Nyy'xai, you're built to do that, and you want to get used to doing that. But you don't actually just blast people, because it's one note. It's actually another form of being boring, and it turns people off. And it makes them think that you just want to be strong. But if you actually show an equal sensitive side, that there are actually vulnerabilities that you have, and you're very human, and you know that you're human, that's crucial. Showing your humanity in both your own personal way and in the stories you tell. Showing how you feel about it. Because if, for example, you're a true hero, then seeing like a baby deer doing its thing in the woods and the nature scene, it should just break your heart. It should just, you know what I mean? As a Nyy'xai, you should let that happen. And you should let people see that in your storytelling. Nyy'xai will help you with that, because Nyy'xai can feel like they don't want to show weakness. Nyy'xai helps show that's not weakness. The ability to take the kind of emotional pain and sensitivity allows the audience to feel that, and that's how you'll move them so greatly. But then you need to be, on the other hand, if you come into a scene where the same baby deer is being messed with by a mean creature or something, or a villain or whatever, then you're supposed to flip off the fucking handle. You're supposed to turn tables over, take branches off, and start beating down monsters. That's also incredibly awesome. Until monsters aren't there anymore. You don't rage around, yeah, I can't. That's not appealing after monster's dead. So it's appealing once monster's there, you get angry, smash monster down, and this is your storytelling. In the part of the story where you're getting maybe to the moral part, where maybe like you're talking to the villain, you talk and know in certain terms how you feel about that. But you also talk and know in certain terms about all your emotions. The ability to shift your emotions and go deep on them and express each one deeply, that'll take you really, really far. And Nyy'xai in particular, having Ni over Zhai, they like a lot of emotional range. They like it to shift quickly, they like it to go deep, and they like it to be able to follow a motif changing quickly. That's something that both the Nyy'xai are designed to do well, so if you're able to do that, that will appeal to them. This comes across as storytelling. So, you know, one thing you want to try to work on that is tell a story that's just not all one note. Something that actually has maybe some ferocity to it and some sensitivity, and being able to tell them at the same time. That's something you're gifted at as a Nyy'xai. All the Jez mojos can get worked up. Ji mojos in particular can get worked up on purpose. But the Nyy'xai can actually get worked up on like conceptual things as they are talking about a story and their belief on how that is, the morality of it and so forth. It will affect them as they tell it. So again, pick things that are important to say and then pick things that move you, and then they will be important and moving to your audience. The logic channels are also a very important part of the synamia, and you'll need to capture them to completely capture your audience, as they say. With that, they're a bit different, one being external and one being internal. We'll start with Nyy'xai. Nyy'xai, we have it constantly. One thing you'll note, I'm sure, being Nyy'xai, is you like stories of all different kinds, maybe you have certain preferences, but one thing you'll share, besides they should be really different and interesting, groundbreaking kind of stories, and you want to actually not be disgusted by the moral code whoever penned this piece. There's also the issue that they know I go off on all the time, world logic. Man, I cannot stand it when a movie takes place with crappy world logic. It takes me out of the ride. Like, I was totally buying the fantasy. Like, seriously, if you're gonna have dragons, cool. If you're gonna actually have, teleportation devices, cool. Just explain to me the logic of that fantasy and then keep the logic where it works. That way, I have examples like George Martin, who wrote the Game of Thrones series, incredible series. And he's just got great storytelling abilities all around. But in this particular context, I'll mention that his world logic is just so seamless, so that when different characters meet each other, you are really interested in how this is going to go, because it doesn't feel like the author or the storyteller is trying to make it that way for a personal reason. It just is that way. For example, me personally, I always get bothered, like in comic books back in the day, is you'll have a character, let's say, that lifts 10 tons. And in their adventures, they're always doing things that would lift 10 tons. My eye's like, okay, cool. They have some sort of magic power that lets them lift 10 tons. Okay, I'm cool with that. Because they explained that to me. But now they just have to keep the logic going. But then they'll meet another creature, or another superhero, or baddie, whatever, and this baddie, it's been stated already in other issues with them that they have strength that's like of a really strong person. A really strong person can lift a couple hundred pounds, 1,000 pounds, maybe 2,000 pounds, and that's getting crazy. That's nowhere near 10 tons. Okay, so my size, like, a very strong human is nowhere near lifting 10 tons, but they put them in the comic and they need them to have a dramatic showdown. So in this dramatic showdown, they make it to where all of a sudden the one character who normally lifts 10 tons is not doing the things they were able to do in their own comic. Like somehow the logic of the math of the world got changed and they're not telling the audience. That turns people off. Particularly people who are logic-based mojos or people who just have good logic powers. That's like, what? I was going for the ride, I was in on the ride, then you lost me. And so that's something you want to do is, you'll notice, for example, Nyy'xai, their Z is not normal Z, but one thing it does is it's trained, among many things, to make sure it's not being bullshitted. So it will enjoy Nyy'xai stories, but if there's like bullshit, as in things don't add up, they'll note that. So you want to make sure when you rehearse your stories or telling people, if they actually have issues with some of your logic, check that logic, make sure it flows, and that way there'll be no break in your spell. Z, this is one that we don't have constantly, so it doesn't necessarily come to us immediately, but your Nyy'xai will help you a lot because they think in these terms, which is actionable items. For Nyy'xai, we tend to think more Ji terms, so I get you fired up in my speech or a story or whatever, and you kind of give them Ji things, like, now that you feel me, I want you to feel like this from now on. And that's very effective, but that's a Ji actionable. Update your code of conduct, update your virtue, but more standard actionable items are actually Z. Like, what do you do with this fervor? Because if you tell a good story, the audience will have a fervor and you want to take advantage of it. It's the point of actually telling your story. So right now you're asking me, like, how do you tell a good story? It's important you understand why you would even tell a story. It's to change the world. So if the audience is geared up and they actually have, you've earned coin with them. You've earned good coin with them with your storytelling, and they now believe you, they're moved by you. It's time to give them some kind of Nyy'xai drive. You need to go home, you need to tell that your family that you love them, and then you need to send in $20 to some charity, I don't care what, right? You basically give them some very clear Z that lets them know, okay, because you're actually kind of telling them, here's a story of what a hero does. Whether they know or not, they're like, what do I do? You do Nyy'xai Bob. You know, Nyy'xai drive Bob or Bobette. and then that lets them know what the conclusion is. It's like the closure of the story. You tell the story, they get worked up, and Nyy'xai are built this way. Their Nyy'xai is built to inhale with a Nyi. The Zhai gets very, very moved, and then it wants to know what it's supposed to do with all this energy that you provide of their storytelling. So you want to have some actionable items, some simple 1, 2, 3 things they can do to take this incredible energy you've given to them and go do stuff with it. That's crucial, one, because that's the point of what you're doing. It's going to help them out, and they'll come back for more. That's another thing we talked about. A lot of times good storytelling involves choices you make before you tell a story. This is something else. Making sure you end the story and give certain kinds of payoffs that they return. Because anyone who's returning for a follow-up to your last story is already a more groomed and open audience than they were at first. So make sure you make good choices going in, and make sure you actually end it in such a way that they get a reward out of it, that they've got to come back for more. So once you got them worked up, give them this. Go home and do this, and make sure you give them a good Z to do. So they go home and do it, it works out, they're like, holy shit, and they want more. They want more of what you're teaching. V, this one comes rather naturally if you do the other stuff right, but I'll just mention it because sometimes you don't do this, is they are maybe confused or not okay with how much they twitch, the HSP, how it moves their body. They need to get used to that HSP energy and just stylize it. Because when you do, you turn to Christopher Walken and Alec Baldwin, and you can just read the fucking phone book and it sounds really good. That's because they turn these nervous twitches, these weird ways they speak, and for example myself, I have a very excited way of talking. I can change that, like that. And when I do that, in order to do something with that nervous energy, it actually has a kind of neat sound to it. Also, this kind of stuff here, we get excited. Now, you don't look like a spaz. I'm sure many Nyy'xai have been called a spaz in there early on, and that's probably Z'd up because I don't like being called a spaz. I can control myself. That's good to a degree, but in storytelling, you want to get worked up. It's good to have some kinetic energy. For example, one thing Nyy'xai do well, as I mentioned, is as they tell a story and they get into it, they feel the emotions of the story they're telling, and that moves the audience. V works the same way. As you get into the story even more, you'll start to relive it. And then we did this, and he went over there, and this kind of motion, it kind of makes them feel more like they're in the scene that you're talking about, and that also is more gripping and therefore more compelling. Finally, Vi. This is not something that Nyy'xai naturally go towards because it's the 8th power, but it does come up, and it's very important, particularly when you're in like alpha mode. In fact, this usually you can tell when Nyy'xai in full Fumasa mode, they're going for an apex move, is they'll start dropping the Vi. That's something that my other gives to me as I get worked up is Vi kill shots. And the way this works, you can do it 3 ways. In fact, generally, if you're doing it really well, you may do it all 3 ways. And they're basically all versions of what I call indisputables. So, a lot of times when Nyy'xai does this natural thing, its angles are very sure, but people can challenge on details and try to trip you up on factoids. So when you're in full alpha mode and you're making a persuasive pitch, you're telling a story, it's really good to have like certain indisputables you can drop. Like, fact, on December such and such, Sally here did this. And if that's true, and no one can dispute that, it gives gravitas to everything else you say. You've already started out, or you can do it in the middle, this is the other person, you can do it in the middle for a kill shot, or at the end as a takeaway. But you basically drop like mountain climbing spikes. Like, that's a given. That is a Vi known given, and no one here can dispute that. You just eyeball everyone. Can anyone dispute that that actually happened on July 6th? No, they can't. And lawyers use this a lot. A lot of the Z legalese, and then the Vi like factoid, like indisputables. Legally, being legalistic and being indisputable. The strengths Z and Vi can bring a lot to storytelling. because sometimes, like I said, the legalistic part is very actionable. It makes it sound like it's not just a wiki story, it's like the beginning of like a campaign. Like we got very excited, and now here's what we're going to do with the excitement. And Vi makes people feel sure. It gives them that certainty when they may feel silly for how worked up your story has gotten them. So that's something you can do with an Nyy'xai. You'll notice people get really worked up, and you almost feel like, oh my God. Well, and they do that thing. They do that little like, I'm getting so excited, maybe I'm being foolish. You look and you give them the vibe. No, I know what I just said. I said this, 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 and this. I don't take it back. I know exactly every word I said, and you can take it to the bank. And this fact here, and you basically, as an Nyy'xai, you don't want to do that overly. One, it's taxing, and it can take away from your overall story thematics. But certain key moments, kill shots, takeaways for them to go home with, like take this home with you. Like that's good time to vibe. You get them all worked up, and you give them so much, they're like dazzled. You look at their dazzled eyes and you go, okay, when you go home, just know this. You're a good person. I love you. I've told you so. Don't ever forget. Things like that. You don't do it all the time, but those vibe punctuations at certain moments can be critical to give people something to hold on to. Particularly when they get so excited, they're like, Nyy'xai has power. Nyy'xai can get people so excited that people get nervous at how much they want this world you're painting for them. They want it, and then they start rejecting the want. The want's so incredible it makes them scared. So the vibe can come in as Z. These are actionable items. This is not with you. These are actionable items, and you can hold on to this. Things like that. So try those out, whatever, and ask more questions. On this note, I think it's very good to bring in Nyy'xai now to kind of give you some Nyy'xai perspective of what she finds interesting in Nyy'xai and the way they do storytelling, because again, the Nyy'xai is incredibly helpful in teaching the Nyy'xai how to be a good storyteller.
So I'll try and let you in on a few secrets about how Nyy'xai receive Nyy'xai storytelling. First of all, if you want to know how to be a good storyteller, just check out any of Coach's videos, of course, because he's the best. But and to give you confidence, starting out, again, like I said in my last video, that you're already a Nyy'xai, a pod layer Nyy'xai, and you know that you're a Nyy'xai, so you first of all have like a lot of Nai bonuses that are automatically, invisibly going to be attractive to a Nyy'xai when you're having an energy exchange with them, because they're just naturally wired. We're energy beings, so we're wired to have good energy exchange with our inspirational, and then on top of it, like, we are constantly sensing energies with our sixth sense and with our Jai. So if a story is already coming from a good place, like that a Nyy'xai from pod layer is most likely, well, definitely going to have superior energy to other Nyy'xai. So that already puts you at the head of the line. Like I mentioned last time, a lot of Nyy'xai are kind of scared that, Nyy'xai get approached so much, and like they hear so many stories, like, why is mine important? So first of all, pod layer is the most important story there is. So if a Nyy'xai is not interested in that story, then they're just dumb. So so that should help a lot with this next point, which is that Nyy'xai are kind of built to be a little paranoid going, and then secondly, like, paranoid about getting like entranced in a Nyy'xai story, and that's because of a very good thing, which is that Jai gets very carried away by Ji. So Nyy'xai are kind of scared about that sometimes because they have the Ni over the Jai. So as we'll get into in the Nyy'xai Temple series, there's something called the Hidden Grove Guardian, which means that showing our Jai is not always like, we have to feel really safe, and like sometimes we have like ridiculous standards for showing our Jai, but like in general, like unless they've over KG'd themselves, like they should be giving you a good response to the G stories that you're telling. But it also helps to know that they are a bit on like the KG side, and Jai has to do with such personal values and things that can be moved around really easily by G. Not easily, but I mean, because the Nyy'xai wants to be savvy, but like you can actually mess with a Nyy'xai's Jai. And so depending on like where a Nyy'xai is at in life, how they feel about that is going to bring about different responses. So, but if you are actually noble and heroic and you have good intentions, then the Jai can sense that and it's set at ease, and so it should be giving you good Jai responses to the Ji. And so Jai gets really delighted when people bring in elements like humor. Nyy'xai stories are usually very intriguing. They have lots of twists and turns to them. Good second conversation. Nyy'xai Glenn asks, how does the Nyy'xai perceive the way in which the Nyy'xai uses their powers?
Well, we've gone over this a little bit already, Glenn, so to answer it a bit, but I would again refer you to the Nyy'xai romance episodes coming out soon, and then in Nyy'xai Temple, which will be coming out soon as well, there's going to be a series of videos for the Nyy'xai Pod Power Spirit Forms, which is their Nyi, Spirit Force Creature, their Zhai, Hidden Grove Guardian, their Z, Righteous Intervener, and their Vi, High Stakes Priestess. And so that will teach you a lot about how they interact with the Nyy'xai and kind of how we see them in our storyline. So take a look at those when they come out and ask me any more follow-up questions that you have.
Nyy'xai Glenn also asks, how does the Nyy'xai go about searching for the Nyy'xai? Where do they congregate?
Glenn, the Nyy'xai congregate all over. That's one of the cool things about them, is they're anywhere and everywhere. They tend to be currently congregating, kind of their Vi is at whatever interest they're currently feeling quite excited about. So you'll find them on just about any forum, but they tend to kind of go in blitzes. They'll get excited about things, and then you'll see them on a forum, and there'll be a lot of action, hot and heavy, while it interests them, and then they won't be seen again for a while. So one thing that really helps with Nyy'xai is the fact that we tend to have a way about us that is always there and can always come into play, because Nyy'xai tend to come and go quickly. So if you have to kind of get your shit together, you have to find your vision, you have to find your code of conduct, too late, because they'll be in and out and it'll be gone. So when the fairies show up at the forum watering hole, so to speak, you kind of have to already have your druid bard game down. So they'll be, oh, I'm just gonna come in, leave. Or maybe who's this nice looking druid bard over there? Okay, so you kind of have to have that on all the time. You can never get tired of following your way to the greatest of your abilities. If you're doing it all the time, a lot of times a Nyy'xai may even spot you before you even know that she's there. She just kind of teleported in, but you were already being an awesome you, doing your Kensei thing, trying to save the world, whatever. So when they came in, trying to follow whatever trend they were tracking and enjoying, they'll notice you doing your heroic thing, and then that can be the most exciting case they're working on, or for them, story that they're doing. They like to run around and find new stories. Your story could be the most interesting, important one. As far as physical locations, again, Nyy'xai tend to be a lot of different places, but one thing you have a nice advantage is being that you are a male Nyy'xai and you're looking for a female Nyy'xai, is the hem-her romantics. All four of them are very heavily represented in a lot of the service industries, particularly things like restaurants and coffee shops. Coffee shops are a place that we go to a lot in order to read people and so forth, get a lot of traffic. And one thing we notice is that there are a few other mojos that work there as well, but the hem-her romantics are hugely represented. I don't know if it'll be the same where you live, but I think that's going to be a phenomenon that we'll probably see just about everywhere to some degree. So I would start finding some coffee shops in your area, hang out there, and I bet you will find both in the staff and the patrons a disproportionate amount of Nyy'xai who go there as opposed to other kinds of places and services.
Nyy'xai Glenn also asks, how do hem-her Nyy'xai couples meet?
I'm going to get into that a bit more in the Nyy'xai Temple regarding hunting the Nyy'xai. So we already did one episode where we kind of gave out 50 male Nyy'xai and 50 female Nyy'xai for you to get used to. There's going to be a follow-up to that once you guys show your skills there, which is going to be, we're going to drop like 50 real-life hem-her Nyy'xai couples, and that will allow you to kind of study their story and study how they met and all those kinds of things. And then also we're going to do another one where we're going to do at least 50 hem-her Nyy'xai couples in movies. And again, you kind of take a look at all those motifs and how they unfold to get an idea of kind of how the interaction happens between the hem-her Nyy'xai when they first meet and go on their dates and do things that they do. So look for those coming soon. There will be 50 real-life couples and 50 movie couples for you to study. So stay tuned. Nyy'xai Glenn asks, what will the Nyy'xai Temple be like? Why is it important, and how can the Nyy'xai Pod Lair help in its manifestation?
Thank you so much, Glenn, for asking about the Nyy'xai Temple, because that really helps support it already before it is in reality yet. So, because the first thing is for Nez Alpha in particular, having an idea and then having it supported makes it easier to bring out the vision into the real world. So, thank you for that. It's going to be really fun. Nyy'xai temple will depend a lot on who we have to be in the temple, so that's actually one thing that you can really help with is we need Nyy'xai. Thank you for your awesome response to the Nyy'xai hunting. Like, I'm really excited to see who you bring in and what kinds of questions you ask, and also the Nyy'xai will have a Facebook page, so we can use lots of support there, and also making the Nyy'xai temple as exciting as possible to any Nyy'xai that you encounter. So thank you so much for that. You can also use those Nyy'xai storytelling skills of yours to talk up the Nyy'xai temple and why it's going to be exciting and important, and all about the Nyy'xai storyline and why that's so spiffy. Nyy'xai temple is important because every mojo needs a special place to go, and Nyy'xai especially need a special place to go because
they're special.
They're special.
Mazaretti also asks, sometimes it seems that my mind just stays on a standby, meaning that there haven't been a train of thought going through for a while, but then I managed to throw in some pieces of currently interesting information which connects to some information of the past and together starts to synthesize new thoughts. If all of those are of similar nature, they can continue evolving for some time. I'm thinking to somehow create a kind of ritual that could help achieve this on request. Is that possible?
Yes, it is, Agris. It's complicated, but it is possible. The simplest way to tell you is to have a good connection with your other. That's the biggest secret. Because what you're talking about is the fact that Nyy'xai is a hunter power, and it wants to find what it's looking for, and then when it can't see that, it kind of just sits there sniffing the air trying to find where is the next place to go. There are a few ways to do it. Use the turn of phrase, a train of thought, or something to that effect. So I think we want to focus here a bit on perceptions, because the perceptions are kind of like a train of thought, a loop of thought, of perceptions that come into you. The Nyy'xai can help get through this on its own by using visionary drive. And one of the ways it does this, there's two main ways. One is what I'll call going long, and the other is what I call the rush charge, I guess, for lack of a better term there. And what this is whenever you don't know quite what to do, or you've taken things where you can, this is what a lot of detectives do, for example, classically, is you take something that has yielded rewards to you in the past, and you take it further than you had before. That's always a nice way to wake up new things you haven't seen before, and perhaps fill in puzzle pieces. So perhaps you've taken a walk 2 miles that direction, perhaps you have watched, it can be anything, like maybe like 2 or 3 movies back to back. Have you ever watched 4 movies? Little things like this. The Nyy'xai can try to figure out, is there a way I can push my perception? And Nyy'xai naturally thinks like that. What can I do to kind of like break my current lens and make a new one? And one of the main things is trying to have an unprecedented experience. Those can actually be very mild. They don't have to be like dangerous or extreme. They can just be different. And by consciously doing it different, new things will happen. For example, do you have a normal way you walk home or walk to your car or do anything? Do it different. Do it noticeably different. And if you do that for a few days, I bet you that you'll have some cool thoughts come to you. I don't know what those thoughts will be. I don't know what questions you're asking they'll fill in. That's the whole point. Nyy'xai works on the idea that you're trying to solve the unknown, so you actually have to kind of just let it come to you. And a good way to do that is just go far and see what you see. So take something you normally do and do it far, or flip the script on it on purpose. Next, what I call like the rush charge, or just sort of like throwing elbows a bit, is you can have a way of interacting, trying to get your information. And sometimes it's useful to try different tact. For example, if something was accepted as a given in your mind, in the material you're reading or the friends you keep, change that. All of a sudden, you know, don't do it. You don't want to be like an ass about it, but you can try playing devil's advocate. See what happens. See what flushes out when you take a different tact, or you take sort of like an extreme tact in the environment or with something that you're researching. You're like, I'm just going to what if. That's good. Take these what ifs of, what if the answer is such and such. A lot of the greatest discoveries have come from this, where a person's looking at the problem, they can't think of anything, so they get goofy. What if a midget committed the crime? Plug it in. Would that make it make sense? Would that be a more logical answer if we plugged a midget in as the killer? I'm trying to make fun of it because Sherlock Holmes and that kind of stuff, so that's kind of riffing on there. But the point is by taking these sort of wild guesses, you might get the answer because Nye'xai's naturally good at doing that. But if you don't have anything, kind of in an investigative case, if you're not sure what to do next, do something. Start trying to put some case together, some work, and if it's not right, you'll know. So if you don't know what to do, try something. Throw it like feelers into the abyss and see what comes back, and that might tell you which way to go. Even if it tells you that's not the right way, okay, then maybe it's over there. And Nye'xai works that way. Nye'xai, of course, needs help to have full synonymy. In this case, we're talking a lot about synesthesia to help your understanding keep coming through. One thing that can be really useful in that, although discernment's coming as well. So to answer your question short, yes, you can do it all the time, but you would need to have a Nyy'xai temple, and you would need to also have a Nyy'xai temple. So you need to have access to a Nyy'xai temple and Nyy'xai temple to do this at peak all the time. But you can do it on your own as best you can with the facilities that you have at your disposal. Going on with that, the Nye'xai can sometimes get its own way because it's so determined to get the answer, it kind of gets like, ugh, and you get like stuck in your idea, one thought. You get writer's block, you get artist block, you get all those kinds of things. You as a detective, you hit a dead end, whatever. You hit some sort of theoretical plateau and plateaued. So they're all basically the same kind of thing, and Nye'xai can get some help. One thing that helps is the V. There's two ways of doing it that help a lot. One is just what I'll call just sort of relaxation, and the other is like kensei. And they actually are similar in this way in that they allow the Nye'xai to do what it's doing without being so self-conscious. So for example, if you've kensei'd on something, like say you've kensei'd on playing a musical instrument or cooking food or anything else like that, and you're working on some sort of case, and you feel a little stagnant or stuck, go do that. Go cook a meal, go take a hike or something like that, and allow yourself to either get really relaxed because it's a very relaxing activity and kind of just let your brain veg, or it's very like, it demands all your faculties. Either way, it relaxes kind of like the valve there, and the Nye'xai sometimes plays better when you don't focus on it so much. But of course, the best of all is the Nyy'xai other, because they're designed specifically, having the Ni over the Zhai, is they can help a Nyy'xai jump tracks to where they can keep going. Because as a Nyy'xai, your biggest cases are so big that you're not going to be able to close them in any kind of time that's usable often. What you can close are mini cases. And the mini cases, kind of playing an MMORPG game, they open up bigger cases. And then you keep opening cases, and then they all constellate to make the total answer. Two things that help with this, and the Nyy'xai helps in particular giving you aid in this way, is first, there's often a need to kind of like start filling in a circle of a model, or a mini answer, and then that's as far as you can go. But what you've done is unlock this partial circle. Go there, unlock that, but then that's as far as it can go. But then you can unlock here. Ni naturally likes to cross-contextualize. It likes to jump like that. It likes to play all over of all the puzzles you're playing with. That makes it easier for you to jump onto things you can work on. Otherwise, you're going like, almost got the circle, almost got the circle. Why can't I think of the final answer? And all these other ones, actually, you could be filling in those cases. So the Nyy'xai allows the Nyy'xai to have an easier time jumping in between a huge, vast host of partially completed cases. And that sounds like that's actually weird, or that might be slow, but no, that's how you're designed to work. And if you fixate on one, it's actually quite hard to close. You actually have to close them all. And the Nyy'xai helps you cross contextualize so you can solve all your cases at once. Then you never get becalmed, you never get stuck, because you just go dot 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 doo, aha, boom, doo doo doo, and you just keep going, and then you unlock everything. Time to render in that fashion. If that throws them, I think they may fail the IQ test. This revolution.
Really? That's a got him?
Exactly. I'm like, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry.
Oh, hello, camera.
What are we talking about?
Hi.
It was great last night,
Great.
wasn't it?
I'm just making notes, equations.
Yes.
I can
Fair enough.
not be scared. The camera just shrunk like
Well, I'm a little taller than you, but also I stood up like, hi world, we'll fight. Huh? What? What?